So he couldn't be here. They thought that he could be here by 1 o'clock, and I told him no, that will be too late. It will fragment the lecture. So that's a bad news. So any one of you want to give me a good news? The good news is that I would like to introduce our visiting imam. This gentleman has come from Egypt to be with us during the month of Ramadan to carry out the uh, the different functions uh, during the Ramadan in the mosque, and that includes leading 5 prayers or services during the day, and then at night Taraweeh, and then he's also doing the circle, halakha. So it's wonderful to have him. I'm going to ask him. Um, he's comfortable in Arabic, so he's going to recite the Quran, and then he's going to talk for about 15 minutes, and Abdul Wahab is going to translate whatever he said. I have to wait for Abdul Wahab to come because I'm afraid that if he's not there and he's talking, he might make up something from his own side. Of course, he's an Egyptian, right? So we'll just wait. General comments about the Sunday lectures. I think they have been very well received by the community, and we have a variety of speakers, and I can identify 3 future speakers right now. Sophie, Dr. Sophie Afridi, she's going to be one of the speakers. Dr. Riaz Chowdhury is going to be one of the speakers. And then back there, Marcia, she is going to be one of the speakers. So we are blessed to have all these speakers to cooperate with us and help us continue this program. Any one of you have any ideas about a speaker or a topic, please share that with us. Um, we will see how we can accommodate because we do want this program to continue. And really, we started out with very few people, and now generally we have about 40 to 50 people who come for these lectures. Yeah. So, all right. I did say something derogatory about you when you were gone. I said that I need to wait until I will request the imam to start. Because if you're not here and he finished, then you will make up something.
I'm going to make up something
Anyway.
So it doesn't matter.
Okay. So she will come and review the presentation and then 15 minutes and then uh, and I have a very dear friend with me, Lisa Holman, and I just wanted to say hello to her. Yeah.
Hi, Lisa.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما ويدعو الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين فمحونا آية الليل وجعلنا آية النهار مبصرة لتبتغوا فضلا من ربكم ولتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب وكل شيء فصلناه تفصيلا وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا صدق الله العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum. Just only an introduction first to Sheikh Sirajuddin. He was born and grown up in Egypt, graduated from Al Azhar University, and he's an imam in Egypt for 20 years. Also, he's actually an international judge in the Quranic recitation. He knows all methods of recitation, Qur'at, the 10 different Qur'at. So he's a teacher in that regard. I'm going to go through quickly the verses he was reading. He said that the Quran was revealed to mankind as a guidance, to guide the mankind. He said that if you believe and you follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you to do, you are going to be saved and you're going to heaven. The people who are not following the message of God and disobeying Him, like Kafirin, they do not believe in all the messages, they will be punished in the day of judgment. Said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the nights dark and He made the day light, so the people could learn how to, the people would learn how to count days and night and to learn the mathematics. He said, everyone, whatever you do, everything will be recorded in your book, and you will be judged in the day of judgment, but what you did according to what was recorded in the books. Everyone is responsible for his or her own deeds. Said also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying also that everyone is responsible for, if you want to be guided and to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's yours. If you do not, you'll be responsible for that. So basically, it's your will to believe in God or disbelieve in God. ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. He's saying that everyone is responsible for himself or herself. No one is going to pay for someone else or is going to be responsible for the sins of one else. Basically, no one is going to pay for the others. So everyone in the day of judgment will be judged only by himself or herself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned that Allah is not going to punish anyone or any nation until He sends clear guidance them to follow. So it depends on the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following these guidances. Surah Allah. Surah Al-Isra.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين، وبعد. استمعنا إلى قول الله جل وعلا: إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا. والمعنى أن هذا القرآن الذي بين أيدينا والذي هو من أول سورة الفاتحة إلى آخر سورة الناس كتاب هداية للبشرية جمعاء. ولقد ضم هذا الكتاب مما فيه من الغيبيات ومما فيه من الأشياء العلمية ومما فيه من الأشياء الطبية ومما فيه من الأشياء الحياتية. ضم هذا وذاك وذاك في القرآن الكريم. لماذا؟ لأنه كتاب رب العالمين، لأنه تنزيل الخالق جل وعلا، نزل على النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم متحديا المشركين، متحديا العالم أجمع، وهو يقول لهم: هذا كتابنا، هذا قرآننا، ضم الله سبحانه وتعالى فيه كل شيء، حيث قال جل وعلا: ما فرطنا في الكتاب من شيء. فكل شيء موجود في القرآن الكريم. إذا نظرنا إلى التفسير العلمي في كلام رب العالمين فسنجد أن القرآن فيه من النظريات العلمية التي اكتشفت مؤخرا والتي لم تكتشف حتى الآن، فسنجد هذا وذاك في القرآن الكريم، لنصدق أنه نزل من عند رب العالمين إلى محمد الذي لم يقرأ ولم يكتب ولم يكن له في يوم من الأيام أن يتعلم من هؤلاء أو من هؤلاء، إنما تعلم من كلام رب العالمين. أولم يكفهم أنا أنزلنا عليك الكتاب يتلى عليهم؟ نعم. ننظر إلى قول الله جل وعلا: وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة. وكلمة العبرة معناها التذكرة، معناها الموعظة. أي عبرة هذه؟ انظروا إلى هذا العلم.
Of course, he started by thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making a praise to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. He mentioned the verse in the Quran إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم, is saying that the Quran itself is a book of guidance, is a book to guide us to the straight path, is going to guide us to the right way. وَبَشِّرْ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا is saying, send a, inform the people who are believing in the Quran that they are going to be rewarded for following the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said also that the Quran has a guidance not only for Muslims, but has a guidance for all mankind. In the Quran, he mentioned there are in the Quran talking about the unseens, talking about the science, talking about medicine, talking about different areas, in all areas. Said in the Quran, وَمَا فَرَطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, we mentioned everything in the Quran. Of course, in that case, it's not necessarily the Quran is not a book of history, it's not a book of science, of mathematics, but in the Quran is also mentioned the themes, the fundamentals, the basics of all different sciences. There's an addition from me. That وَمَا فَرَطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. It means we do not leave any idea, any fundamentals, any basic concepts in the Quran. He's saying, do you need someone else to help you in translation? He's saying that there are many, from the scientific point of view, there are many things that is already mentioned in the Quran. It was discovered in the past, and there are many scientific facts. It's going to be discovered in the future too. But the Quran also point to these things in a very in principle. It's not really in a very detailed method, because this is left to a human being to explore. This is important. He said also that the Prophet, peace be upon him, was not known to be he was known to be the As-Sadiq al-Amin, a trustworthy and a very good and a humble human being. But he was not known to be a man who's talking wisdom things. He did not involve in really with the educated people. You know, the poetry was really very high in the Arabic language. Arabs at that time, they were expert in the language. So the Prophet, he was not known to be in these circles of science. He was not educated. He's an unlettered man. He was a trustworthy. He took care of his family, but he was not educated at all. And this is important for us also to understand, that the Prophet really was not known to say wisdom, to say sayings or poetry or anything like that, because the miracle was the Quran, that the Prophet didn't know any, he was not educated, and all of a sudden Allah gave him وَأَتَيْنَاهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the hikmah, gave them the wisdom, gave them the science, the knowledge to talk to the people in a totally different way. He was not known to have these capabilities. طيب. I'm forget.
Okay. إن لكم في الأنعام.
نعم. فعندنا القرآن الكريم فيه من الإعجاز العلمي، ولنضرب بذلك مثل في قول الله جل وعلا في سورة النحل: وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة. وكلمة العبرة يعني التذكرة. ثم يقول جل وعلا: نسقيكم مما في بطونه من بين فرث ودم لبنا خالصا سائغا للشاربين. وكأن القرآن يتحدى العالم في كيفية صناعة اللبن، هذا اللبن الذي ذكره الله تعالى في كيفية صناعته حتى يخرج إلينا لبنا أبيض، ما أحلاه في هذا البياض، لبنا خالصا سائغا للشاربين. والآن العلم يكتشف أن أفضل اللبن هو لبن الأم في حال رضاع الطفل الصغير. من الذي دلنا على ذلك؟ القرآن الكريم. القرآن الكريم عندما دلنا على النحل فقال جل وعلا: وأوحى ربك إلى النحل أن اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا ومن الشجر ومما يعرشون. لو قسمنا أفضلية العسل، عسل النحل، سنجد أن أفضل العسل ما يسمى عندنا العسل الجبلي، فالله قدمه: أن اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا، ثم قال: ومن الشجر. فكأن هذا التقسيم تقسيم أفضلية، أفضل العسل ثم ثاني مرحلة ثم ثالث مرحلة. من الذي دلنا؟ القرآن الكريم. ثم يقول: فيه شفاء للناس. كم من النظريات العلمية، كم من الاكتشافات العلمية التي تبحث عن عسل النحل وتصل بنا إلى أن كلام رب العالمين كلام صحيح فيه شفاء للناس. فانظروا إلى كلام رب العالمين، ثم انظروا من علم محمدا التفسير العلمي، النظريات العلمية. أضرب مثلا ثالث، وهو اكتشاف علم الأجنة منذ 1444 سنة، وهذه الآيات تنزل على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. فيقول جل وعلا: ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. اكتشف العلماء مؤخرا كيفية أطوار وخلق الإنسان. من الذي دلنا؟ القرآن الكريم. يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة لنبين لكم ونقر في الأرحام ما نشاء إلى أجل مسمى. إنه قرآن رب العالمين نزل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا ليتحدى الكفار في عهده، إنما ليتحدى العالم أجمع إلى قيام الساعة. تعالى يا أستاذ.
And you want me to translate or not? I'll ask you step by step. Yeah, I like fake. Okay, بس I don't know what to do. Okay. He was talking about some of the miracles in the Quran. The first example he mentioned, إِنَّ لَكُمْ فِي الْأَنْعَامِ لَعِبْرَةً. There is an example for you, or explanation for you, in the creation of An'am. An'am in the Quran,
Ibn. One Yes. In the Quran, when the Quran is saying An'am, he's talking about the Ibn, the camel, he's talking about the cows, and he's talking about the goat. This is the word An'am in the Quran. He's talking about, in the Quran, he's talking about the process of creating the milk inside An'am, and it making it very clear, very wide, and very healthy for the human beings. That's an example of the science before it was already discovered. Also, he mentioned that also it became evidence that the milk from the feeding mother is the best and the best for the children. The second example he mentioned about the bees. Was قال ربك للنحل وأوحينا إلى ربك وأوحى ربك إلى النحل أن اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا ومن الرجل. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أوحى للنحل. This is the second verse. He mentioned to the bees اتخذي من الجبال بيوتا. It means to take houses and to build your hives. Hives is the right one, yes, on the mountain. And then second to it is the trees. So there was a preference for the bees to start with the jibal. And the saying also, it is known today that the best honey is the honey that comes from the bees that all in the jibal mountains. Second to it is the bees that is created on the trees. This is the second example. Also, he mentioned that the Quran, فيه شفاء للناس. This is the Quran also saying that there is a cure in the honey, in the honey. This is a verse in the Quran. And of course, with the new discoveries, this is an addition from me. Okay? So, and about that also, it helps in the allergy. If you have any honey from the place you are in, it helps you. What do you say? It will be your immune system in that regard. This is my addition. This also, in another way, this is a proof also that, because there is a verse in the Quran he mentioned, he's saying that the Prophet, who was not educated, could not come up with any of these meanings and understandings of his own. Because the verse after that is coming, when kuntum, is talking about, if you are in doubt, all of these examples was proved to them that this is the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the Prophet cannot invent any of these on his own, neither the people who were on that time also in Arabia. So saying to them, if you have seen all of those in front of your eyes, and this is a proof this came from God, then you do not have to doubt in the day of judgment. And there will be a day of judgment, and you are going to be resurrected and standing in front of your Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for judgment. Yeah. Also, it's talking about the science of embryology, and you already know that how the human beings are the steps of the kids are created are created. I don't know how to explain all that. We need Dr. Hussein to explain that. Okay. Yeah, that's what. Actually, he mentioned that was a topic upfront that with all of these examples, you have to be sure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everyone will die, everyone will be resurrected, everyone will be in front. Don't be doubtful of this because of all of these sciences. That is in the Quran. And that's all. Assalamu alaikum.
Good job.
And shukr. So, if you allow me, I'll tell you a story. There was somebody from Punjab. Huh? Yeah, somebody from Punjab. This is the perils of translation. Somebody from Punjab used to come to my hometown of Peshawar. He did not know Pashto. He only knew Urdu. And he would set up his stand to sell powdered soap. And so the people, just like in the old countries, people would gather around, but he will hire a translator. To whatever he was saying, the translator will translate. And this is how it goes. This is the man who's selling soap. He says, this soap. And the man translates this soap. If it does not work, and he translates in Pashto, if it does not work, he says, take out your shoe and hit me on the head. And he says, take out your shoe and hit him on the head. So these are the perils of translation. I want to bring up one more subject. And that is the subject of Islamophobia, which is very prevalent. A few days ago, I received the recent issue of Islamic Horizons, which is published by ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. And they have devoted about 2 or 3 articles to Islamophobia. But then they have a list of most Islamophobic incidents in the past year and a half. And number 1, to my displeasure, was that the people or the Western press were criticizing the state of Qatar for banning alcohol during the World Cup. Now, on the surface, it looks terrible, right? So it was about 11 o'clock at night. I was reading. I says, that's terrible. The facts are different. The facts are that Qatar bribed itself to land the rights to have the World Cup. That is given. Even FIFA, the parent body of the World Cup, has agreed that many officials were bribed to have. Second, FIFA had said that people who are coming to attend, you will have alcohol available for them because you may not like alcohol, but millions of people who come to watch, they would, and they agreed. 3, he said, you will not restrict people who have a different sexual orientation. They will have a freedom to come and watch the games. They agreed. 4th was that you will not exploit the cheap labor imported from other countries to building that infrastructure. I mean, if you have seen the reports, they were treated horribly in Qatar. So they agreed to all that, but just before the World Cup, they reneged on it. Now, should I applaud Qatar that they reneged on their promises? No, I'm not going to renege. I'm not going to say that the people objecting to them is Islamophobic. I'm saying that breaking your promise and the contract is anti-Islamic. So I wondered if any one of you have any comment about the topic of Islamophobia. I just gave you one example. By the way, my letter is being published in the next issue. Because I think everything which we hear that is Islamophobia is not. And I'm afraid that if we start throwing the term loosely, it will be almost like that the term anti-Semitic is being thrown around loosely. I think that's something which we need to be careful. Please.
Isn't it that they couldn't use alcohol in the stadium, but they could buy outside the stadium?
No.
I remember reading that.
See, the irony is that the government of Qatar, so-called protecting the Islamic values, hosted parties for the foreign delegates and had a free alcohol. So how could you on one side say that we are Muslim countries, we don't want any alcohol. On the other hand, you're hosting the parties. But anyway, you had a comment.
Yeah, I wonder if Qatar lobby has given any donation to Islam.
Qatar has what?
Has made a public money to ISNA or something like that.
I don't know that. I really don't know. There were about 10, there's a list of, like number 1, number 2, number 3 incidents of Islamophobia. And most of them are true. No question about it. What's happening in India is true Islamophobia and the other countries. But this does not rise, in my view, to the level of Islamophobic because Qatar is responsible for everything. So why should we give them the cover of religion? Before I committed a mistake. Before I pointed out 3 people who are going to be our future speakers. 4 is Salim, and he is a well-known architect from Bowling Green State University. He's a distinguished university professor and made his name in architect in the country. So he's going to be one of the speakers. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So I hope you will forgive my sin.
Uncle, I don't know if this answers your question, but our response to Islamophobia is when certain bad actors who profess to be Muslim commit an act that is we consider un-Islamic. We tend to say, well, that's un-Islamic, they're not real Muslims. And I think it's that fallacy of the no true Scotsman fallacy. You familiar with that? Where someone does something bad and then you say, well, a real Scotsman wouldn't do that. If someone does this, well, a real Scotsman wouldn't do that. But if someone Scottish does something, they're Scottish, they're doing it. So I think from a Muslim perspective, when there are certain bad actors who perform acts that we find very bad in the name of Islam, we shouldn't disown them. We should say, these are Muslims who are not behaving properly, but we shouldn't say they're not Islamic. Does that make sense? I think that's kind of our response to bad actors is to say, well, they're not Muslims, but maybe we should own it and correct it, take responsibility.
If you extend this argument, and I agree with you, by the way, and then it becomes a litmus test of who is a good Muslim, right? Do we have a litmus test? No, we don't. We cannot judge. I want to take you about medieval times. Today, we do not get tired of talking about Ibn Sina, Al-Razi, and all those philosophers. If they were here today, and they did exactly what they did in their personal lives, they would be considered heretics and non-Muslims. I mean, it's not something which I am inventing, it's something which is part of history. So your point is, why should we be so judgmental? Actually, we should be labeling those people as Islamophobic, right? Rather than My plea is that this term has become so loose that anybody who says, you remember the case recently of a professor in Minnesota who was fired because she showed the image of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in her class. She gave ample notice to the class that she was going to show that. That was part of the course of history. Well, some Muslim students got very irate. They demonstrated. In a knee-jerk response, the university administration fired her. They said it was Islamophobic. Is it? If it is Islamophobic in America, you go to Iran and see that the images of the Prophet and Imam Ali and it's part of that culture. Are they all Islamophobic? I don't know. Any other comment? Please add.
So yeah, I do agree that we shouldn't kind of the boy who cried wolf, right? When the real Islamophobia happens, if we call it out for like every little thing, then it gets trivialized, right? So there's like that story, the boy who cried wolf. So we could draw parallels from that. But I think maybe why we're quick to do that is because in the West it kind of works. That's like when you get accused of being an anti-Semite, that shuts down the conversation very quickly because nobody wants that label, or if you are labeled as a racist or a bigot, that shuts down the conversation very quickly. So I think we are maybe capitalizing on that. Well, if we just throw this out at somebody, they will stop whatever makes us temporarily feel bad, and it shuts down any meaningful conversation. So I think precedent has been set with these other labels, and we just sort of learn from that book, whether right or not.
By the way, the follow-up on that professor, CARE, which is one of the advocacy group for Muslims in America and Canada, they say no, it's not Islamophobic. Yeah, and she was reinstated.
See, my view is on the contrary, that in our country, as of now, United States of America, we have so many like drug addiction, drinking issues, violence. And if you look at the society as a whole, very small percentage, maybe 5 to 6% do these things. And I've read and I personally, I feel that the Muslim community in the US adds to good life people who are honest, who educate their kids properly, look after their families, and avoid all these so-called, addictions and stuff. So the society as a whole is richer because of the Muslims that decided to stay in this country and contribute to society as a whole. And that's what I read, analysis of people when they look at the crime as a whole and violence. Very few times we have seen violence among Muslim communities. I've read about it. Maybe I don't read as much about that, but I haven't seen very few reports about that.
Any other comment or question? Yeah. By the way, we are going over 1:30 because the Zohar prayers are not until 12:45. 1:45, yes.
Dr. Amjad, like anti-Semitic with its loose definition, it helped the Jews worldwide to do what they want. Why are we worried about something that is Islamophobic that is not? Because anti-Semitic helped them. Anything you say anti-Semitic, people shut up, and they don't talk about them.
And you want the same thing for Islamophobic?
I'm just asking. I'm just asking. Why is that? From I understand from right or wrong point of view, we should put everything in its right category. But I'm saying from the interest point of view, anti-Semitic, help them a lot. Why not leave that term loose also? For our benefit.
I can tell you my personal incident.
I beg to differ.
No,
But I think in 1985 or 84, I wrote a letter to the Blade that if we didn't have Iran-Iraq war, if we didn't have Kuwait war, the Middle East, Persian Gulf countries will be as rich as Europe, and it'll be like Europe, Japan, North America. And then I wrote in my letter that so much money is being wasted in aiding Israel and makes the conflict worse. So we should refrain from that. And I can tell you for the next week, my phone rang nonstop. People will call and hang up. People will call and hang up. I thought, what the hell did I do? I got so many crank calls, I couldn't believe myself.
Remember that letter that you published?
thank you.
Yeah. You published one letter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I have been writing a bi-weekly column since 1994. So you can imagine the number of calls. But this was an interesting call I want to share with you. There was somebody who called in the middle of the night. My son, Mani, took the call. And then in the morning, at the breakfast table, he tells us that, Dad, last night, somebody called and he says, why don't you go away? Why don't you go back to where you come from? Okay? So Mani said that that is him and his brother Kari and Tasha, they have decided that Mom was born in Ann Arbor, she will go back to Ann Arbor. Kari and Tasha were born in Detroit, they will go back to Detroit. Mani was born in Pennsylvania, so he will go back to Pennsylvania. And then he said, we don't know about you, Dad, what you gonna do? So this is the knee-jerk response. I don't refrain from speaking my mind, but I will be polite. I'll be within the limits of decency, but I will express my views. And for that reason, there are lots of people in this town who don't like it. They have tried, incidentally, very hard to get me off the pages of the Blade. But thanks to John Block, he's stubborn. And he gave me a free rein to write whatever I want to write. Would you imagine in his 29 years, I have never been told by the Blade or his management, you should refrain from writing on this subject or that subject. Yeah. And the only two columns that they were censored had nothing to do with politics or religion. They were on social issues. And they thought that in the family newspaper, this topic doesn't fit right. So that's about it. I mean, I've written about 800 pieces. Yeah. But coming back to Islamophobia, I think that we need to be sensitive. I disagree with you that maybe using the term will benefit the Muslim community, maybe, but sooner or later, it will not be successful. You keep calling wolf and it's not going to be, because people catch on. So, any final comments?
Thank you. First, about the Islamophobia, the idea of anti-Semitism, definitely is an issue that has been used forever, still continuing, and they are very successful in it. If we're going to encounter this with the idea of Islamophobia, we have to be very careful because definitely there is Islamophobia forces, but there are also the situation where we have to make a distinction. If we pick on anything there and call it Islamophobia, sometimes come back to hurt us. So in the long run, we are not Israel, I hope. Nothing like Israel. This is my comment. I think the other one thing I want to mention is about, it looks like Islamophobia is something is hurting the Islamic community. Yeah, I think probably it is, but I think for us in the United States as Muslim community, definitely it's up to us how we present ourselves. And this forum says a lot about it. But for the general, the idea of Islamic world altogether is who is hurting more? Islamophobia hurting us, or what we do is what's hurting us? Say, this is the more important thing. Like, there's a lot of situations, as we all know, and sometimes even we look into Israel in particular. Israel, I just occupying the land, and they're doing a lot of things there. But at the end of the day, then obviously Israel got stronger, United States behind it. Then all of a sudden here now we are falling one person, one country at a time. You know, with the idea of cooperation, idea of recognition of Israel, this, and that. So why should I really criticize Israel? Israel want to do what they want to do. But what about us? What about the Emirates? I'm going to start talking about countries here. What about Bahrain? What about this? What about that? So I think the picture, Islamophobia is a good point to bring in, but it is one force works against us, but there is much larger forces that work against us, which coming from us, from within, and that's the point I think you want to make.
Well, thank you, Salim. I think it's a wonderful comment. Yeah. Once in a while, it doesn't hurt to open your buttons and look inside, right? To see what are we doing instead of having a knee-jerk response, but every time somebody says something, and then you say we must respond. I think a good example would be that knee-jerk response. This college in Minnesota fired the professor, and then the Muslims rose up. Muslim organization says, no, this is not Islamophobia. And they reinstated the professor. So I think that we need to voice, just like I mentioned about the Islamic horizon, that Qatar, they are saying that it's Islamophobic to criticize Qatar. No, it doesn't rise up to that level in my book. Yeah. Any final comments by anybody?
I agree with you, but I do think there was an element of unfair coverage of Qatar. I think Qatar was not given credit when it was truly due. I think although the polls that I've read where they actually asked families and women and children how much more enjoyable this World Cup. It was truly a family affair, like for the first time ever. And for the first time in a long time, women and children were able to partake in the celebrations without the fear of being harassed or seeing something inappropriate or hearing something inappropriate, etc. So everything I agree. The points you made, I agree with them. But I think also on a global scale, like when Messi was given that honorific cape to wear, I mean, within just a few seconds of that, the mainstream media were just like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe they put that ugly thing on him and just ruined the picture forever." I mean, that is a veiled even though this is something very honorable. It was a huge honor to give that to Messi, and he donned it very proudly. But the undercurrent of that is an intense dislike of all things Arab and Muslim, I think.
Well, on that point, broadly speaking, we disagree. On broadly speaking, yes. Yeah. Any final comment? Well, thank you very much. The prayers are at 12:45, and then we shall see you next Sunday. Thank you for coming.
Really?